The town of Dillford is known for its riblets and its population of humans, vampires, and zombies. Vampires are at the top of the social order. Brain-eating zombies are second-class citizens and callers, while humans sit uneasily in the middle. That said, it's got its fair share of outcasts trying to find their place in such a strange community. At Dillford High School, Dag Parker tells his friend, Parminder, that he might finally get to sleep with hot girl Lorelei. Parminder bursts his bubble, saying Lorelai's only using Dag to stash her ganja. Dag is upset at his friend's lack of support, yet fails to even catch Lorelai's attention when they meet at school. Meanwhile, Petra Lane shyly flirts with popular vampire boy Milan. They're discussing the upcoming vamp party Milan invited her to, when nerdy boy Ned Mosley tries to access his locker behind them. Milan snarls at Ned, who gets smacked to the ground by another vampire. Dag looks on from a distance, but he walks away. Later, in the teacher's lounge, Ned tries to talk to vampire teacher Mr. Keller, who graded his essay with an F. Mr. Keller gets into a rant about his 97-year career on a hapless Ned, finally admitting that giving him an F was a power trip. At lunch, Dag continues to pester Parminder about how to get in bed with Lorelei. Parminder indulges him at first but gets annoyed by Dag's judgmental attitude. Meanwhile, Ned politely redirects a zombie away from the gazpacho line. While Dag, Parminder, and the rest of the baseball team are ogling Lorelei, Jock Chaz Jr. interrupts them with a litany of arrogant comments. Petra sits with her goth friends at a table, where she reveals she's kind of dating Milan. Her friends are impressed but warn her about the vampire's player reputation and awful attitude. Petra stammers a defense, but they catch Milan intimidating Ned again. As it turns out, Chaz Jr. is Ned's brother. A zombie girl tries to help Ned with his spilled food. Later on, while walking to baseball practice, Dag and Parminder notice a red sports car. Dag recognizes it as Rick Wilson's, the man who fired his mom, and brings up the subject whenever they meet. While handing out uniforms for the Wolves baseball team, Rick picks on Dag again. Turns out, Rick fired Dag's mom for trying to unionize his zombie employees and gloats even more when Dag gets angry. Moments later, Rick brags about his company, Malfasta Corporation, putting Dillford on the map with its popular riblet product. At practice, Rick and Coach Pulsifer notice Dag's exceptional pitching skills, except when he's under pressure. Chaz Jr. steps up to the plate, hurling insults at Dag and bragging to his girlfriend, Lorelei, who's watching in the stands. Out of sheer nerves, Dag throws the ball straight to the eye of Chaz Jr., knocking him down. Everybody is shocked as the coach and Rick rush to a screaming Chaz Jr., while Lorelei looks at Dag admiringly. At the vamp party that night, Petra and Milan are making out in a trailer. Petra is alarmed when Milan tries to bite her neck, thinking they'll only be getting intimate. The vampire reveals he already slept with Lorelei, but what he wants with Petra is something more special. Flattered, Petra kisses Milan. Meanwhile, at the Mosley family dinner table, Ned's father, Chaz Sr., berates Chaz Jr. for getting injured. Ned asks to be excused but gets picked on instead, down to his aversion to riblets. Ned explains he's allergic to the meat, adding that the riblet contains numerous chemicals, including tetrafluoroxapan, or TXP. Later, Ned earnestly tells his parents he has dreams, but they persuade him to settle for a less ambitious life. Upset at their apathetic attitude, Ned leaves the house. At the Parkers' house, Dag tries to get intimate with Lorelei, who is smoking a roll of ganja she stashed under Dag's bed. When Dag tells Lorelei he might be in love with her, she laughingly makes excuses to leave as someone knocks on the door. Shooter, Dag's father, walks in to find the bag of ganja on Dag's bed, much to the boy's embarrassment. Dag's parents come to his room to talk to him about the ganja, saying they totally understand. Dag tries to explain, but they pivot to the topic of bodily changes. His parents describe an enormous change that men in the Parker clan go through, but Dag cuts them off and bids them good night. Later that night, Ned observes the zombies in a designated collar-free zone. He's approached by the zombie girl who tried helping him earlier and marvels at how all zombies seem to get along. Ned grows envious of the zombies' uncaring and unfeeling nature, and tricks the zombie girl into biting his foot to get infected. Around the same time, Petra lies in her room, starting to feel the effects of Milan's bite. She looks in the mirror and notices she no longer has a reflection. She goes to a supermarket to buy blood products, but an acquaintance sees her and notices her purchases. Petra hurries out of the supermarket in embarrassment. Later that same night, Dag, Petra, and Ned find themselves outside, contemplating their frustrating lives. They are suddenly distracted by a bright light from a massive alien ship hovering in the sky. After a few days, Rick speaks in front of the human community who have gathered at the high school gymnasium. Chaz Sr. notes that the vampires are absent from the meeting, suspecting they might have made alien contact. At the Dillford Blood Bank, Mr. Keller addresses a vampire crowd, speculating that humans have conspired with the aliens to eliminate the vampire population. Petra walks in to see Milan sitting there and waves at him, but gets ignored. Chaz Sr. and Mr. Keller continue to stoke their respective crowd's fears, until both groups agree to launch preemptive strikes on each other. Dag notes that the meeting has lost its focus on the aliens. Meanwhile, at the zombie installation, Ned rallies the zombies to get back at the other two groups and leads the brain-starved creatures toward the town. That night, at the town square, the three factions engage in a bloody battle. While the entire town is killing each other, Dag finds Lorelai lounging in his car. Lorelai suggests they get intimate, and Dag drives away to do it at home. Elsewhere, Petra confronts Milan, but he attempts to brush her off. Milan admits that he only seduced her to quench his thirst. Enraged, Petra tries to attack him, but she gets tossed into a car instead. As Dag and Lorelai try to get it on, a vampire dragging a human breaks through the door. The two teens escape through the window and get startled by an explosion just as they get attacked by a group of vampires. Chaz Sr. comes to their rescue, wielding wooden stakes. He stabs the vampire that attacked Lorelai, then proceeds to outfight the other vampires with expert moves. Finally, he disposes of two vampires in a stylish shower of blood. As Chaz Sr. recalls his anti-vampire training, he is attacked by several zombies, and they slowly eat him alive. Dag and Lorelai watch in horror until they are spotted by vampires, so they run for it. Chaz Sr. dies, but quickly comes back as one of the undead. Still fuming, Petra walks back to a forest road, only to spot Lorelai running with Dag. Petra gets angry and chases after them, along with a horde of vampires. Dag and Lorelai manage to get into a darkened house, where they find Ned and a group of zombies. Chaos ensues as vampires barge inside as well. As Dag and Lorelai try to escape upstairs, Petra goes berserk and leaps to catch Lorelai. Dag stands frozen just as Petra bites into her neck. Dag then pushes Petra off the stairs, and she briefly gets away. He gets a hold of a sharp wooden object and tries to stab Petra, but Ned tackles him away. Dag gets attacked by another vampire, but he stabs it with a wooden fish ornament. A bald vampire pushes Ned to the ground, but Ned bites off its thumb and spits it into the vampire's mouth. The bald vampire stumbles back, knocking Petra down just as a police cruiser crashes through the house and runs him over. Dag, Petra, and Ned get into a standoff when a bright light distracts them. They look outside to see the alien ship spewing a smoke-like substance that engulfs the town. Out of the smoke comes a horde of misshapen bipedal aliens, seemingly disintegrating anything that gets stabbed with their tentacles. The teens look on in shock, but Dag snaps out of it and starts knocking on a trap door, calling for a Mrs. Miller. Stuart, Mrs. Miller's son, answers back and asks Dag a number of ridiculous questions. Stuart eventually opens the door after verifying Dag's identity. Dag follows Stuart and Mrs. Miller down the basement bunker, followed by Petra and Ned. Stuart briefly panics at the sight of Petra and Ned, but calms down enough to try and establish an hierarchy. As Dag goes to shut the trap door, he hears screams and hurries back. To his horror, Petra and Ned are already eating Stuart and Mrs. Miller. Dag gets ready to fight, but Petra persuades him to stick with them, as the only way they can survive is to band together. Later that night, they chat until Petra questions Dag's attraction to Lorelai, saying he hesitated to save her. Dag denies this, but Petra counters that if he really cared about someone, he would just jump right in. Dag and Petra's chat gets around to their parents. Petra thinks Dag's parents are cool, while Dag finds out she's an orphan. They also discover that the longer Ned goes without eating brains, the more he regains his intellect. At the same time, Petra learns that Dag and Ned used to be friends. Dag worries about his parents and resolves to get out of the Millers to find them, but Petra reminds him of the alien threat. Dag pitches that they can starve Ned long enough for him to come up with a plan to defeat the aliens. The next morning, they climb out of the Miller's basement, but Petra collapses under the sunlight. Dag immediately removes his clothes to cover Petra. The trio agrees to split up and meet back at the high school, but Dag stumbles into a clothesline just as an alien comes up behind him. Petra and Ned make it back to the high school first, and so does Dag shortly after, still with no clothes on. Dag tells Petra how the aliens seem to ignore him on his way to school. Ned theorizes that the aliens only detect the inorganic matter in clothes, allowing Dag to slip past them unnoticed. While eating lunch, Dag and Ned get into how the latter became a zombie. Dag gets judgmental about Ned's reasons, but Ned recalls how Dag thought he was cool back in middle school. Dag counters that he admired Ned's hacking skills back then, but didn't want to keep hanging out with a loser, so Ned angrily shuffles away. Later on, Petra finds Dag sulking alone inside an empty boiler. They talk and open up about their vulnerabilities, and Petra cries for feeling constantly inferior to Lorelai. As Dag comforts her, they start to make out and get intimate. Dag gets startled when he thought Petra bit his neck. Petra gets upset and leaves Dag guilt-ridden in the boiler. After a while, the trio sees the aliens moving, and Ned recommends they leave town. Dag insists on going back for his parents, and Petra remembers the alien's blind spot. They journey to Dag's house without clothes, but find the house empty. They dress up and look for Dag's parents in the basement, but an alien comes up behind Ned and attacks them. Ned saves Dag from being stabbed by a tentacle, and the zombie boy disintegrates just as Petra chops the alien's head off. That night, Dag unpacks his guilt about Ned to Petra. He recalls a baseball game when they were kids and how Ned, despite being capable, just never got the chance to prove himself. Ned suddenly shows up in one piece, and the two scream in relief. Ned discovers that the aliens merely teleport whoever gets stabbed with their tentacles. He deduces that everyone from Dillford isn't dead, but simply hidden away somewhere. However, the alien that stabbed Ned died before it could transport him all the way to that secret location. Moreover, Ned also figured out that the aliens are after the TXP and Malfasta's riblets. He shows Dag and Petra the gross allergic reaction he had from the alien's tentacle as proof. The next day, Dag, Petra, and Ned make it to the Malfasta riblet plant, and Rick lets them in. Dag and Petra appeal to Rick's vanity to get him to give the aliens the riblets. However, Rick only shows contempt for the citizens, taking off Dag until they hear a scream. They run to find Ned eating Rick's secretary, Daisy, prompting an enraged Rick to throw them out. Dag comes up with a plan to get Rick to help them. The three get themselves stabbed by a couple of aliens on purpose so they can get to where the people of Dillford are imprisoned. The trio is teleported to a Palway superstore, where each species is separated by a force field. Milan catches Petra and attempts to drink blood from her, but she stabs him in the gut. Ned also reunites with his zombified father and brother while Dag finally finds his parents alive and well. Lorelei survived too, though now turned into a gorgeous vampire, much to Petra's awe and disappointment. Dag and Petra find Ned, and they encourage him to think of a way to bring down the force fields. After an incredible effort, Ned comes up with a DOS attack method to overload and short out the security system. This entails everyone in the Palway hitting all the force fields at the same time. Dag's speech and his father's USA chant convince them to work together. The citizens charge at the force fields, shorting the system out and destroying it. The remaining Dillford survivors make their way to the riblet plant, but Rick stops them. Once again, Dag talks to Rick with a heartfelt plea, telling him they both deserve to be part of the town. As the crowd starts chanting his name, Rick finally lets them in, followed swiftly by the aliens. Rick beckons the aliens toward the vat of unprocessed riblets. The bipedal creatures turn out to be machines whose hatches open up to reveal a multitude of small slug-like aliens. The aliens all dive into the vat until the contents churn, transforming into a 90-foot humanoid alien being. In a German accent, the alien explains that they only came for the TXP peacefully. But then the town went crazy. To protect the citizens from each other, the aliens locked them up in the Palway. The giant alien proceeds to quote a Billy Joel song and lectures the citizens in a condescending way. Petra pushes back, and Rick throws a wrench at the alien, causing it to attack the crowd. Mr. Keller gets smashed into bloody drops, and Petra is knocked back, dislodging an ammonia hose. The spray starts to melt the giant alien, and Dag quickly gets Mrs. Mosley to spray ammonia on the creature. Meanwhile, Milan grabs Petra and throws her into a storage room. Dag notices this a moment later, and, remembering Petra's words about hesitating, immediately jumps at Milan. Dag gets a couple of hits in, but the vampire breaks his arm and overpowers him. Milan chokes Dag and renders him unconscious before leaving, exposing the boy to the full moon. Then, Dag opens his eyes and transforms into a hairy creature as his arm heals, realizing this is the change his parents tried to tell him. Now a werewolf, Dag attacks Milan to protect Petra, and the desperate vampire winds up for a running knife stab. Dag dodges out of the way of Milan's jump, and the vampire impales himself on a wooden spike. The giant alien succumbs to the ammonia hosing and is now reduced to a miniature size. It escapes back up to the spaceship, priming a subatomic fusion explosive to decimate the town. Ned catches the ball-shaped bomb and tosses it to werewolf Dag, who throws it back to the alien ship. The spacecraft then explodes spectacularly. Days later, at Dillford High School, Dag is now a popular kid, and even gets hit on by Lorelei. He declines the vampire girl's invitation to eat with her and walks over to Petra. They see Ned bonding with Chaz Jr. and the zombie girl. Dag and Petra then decide to make out under the bleachers.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.